Welcome to the MamasteFit podcast, Birth Story Friday. In this birth story, Holly is going to be sharing her hospital birth story where she was induced for gestational hypertension. Welcome to the MamasteFit podcast. This is Gina, perinatal fitness trainer and birth doula.
And this is Roxanne, labor and delivery nurse and student midwife.
And this is the MamasteFit podcast, where we empower you on your prenatal fitness, birth, and postpartum return to fitness journey.
Our podcast shares how to move throughout your pregnancy to stay strong and comfortable. Pain is not a requirement of pregnancy. Understand the science of birth and how to approach recovery after birth.
We share our personal experiences as mothers navigating the stage of lives, plus our professional expertise as birth workers and fitness professionals.
Our goal is to help you feel confident as you navigate the perinatal timeframe for an empowering pregnancy, positive birth, and postpartum journey.
We are glad to have you with us on this journey and that you've chosen us to support you. Welcome to the MamasteFit podcast, Birth Story Friday. Today we have one of my doula clients, Holly, who is here to share her birth story, which was a pretty fast induction.
Hi, nice to join you guys. It was fast for you, maybe. I felt like it took forever to get induced, but the actual birth was great.
Yeah, I guess it was probably fast for me. I think it was a little bit longer for you. So tell us about how you prepared for birth. What was your pregnancy like?
We tried for about 7 months to get pregnant, so I was really excited to get pregnant, but I actually hated being pregnant. I threw up a lot during my pregnancy, so almost every week I was nauseous and vomited probably once or twice a week up until I gave birth. I didn't feel super connected. Like, I knew I was pregnant and I loved seeing my baby and I was excited, but I didn't actually have that love that I had for him until I actually had him. If that makes any sense. So
no, that makes total sense. It was similar for me with my second because I kind of detached myself from the pregnancy, because I was afraid of pregnancy loss. So I don't know if it was similar for you or it just took that time.
I think I'm 30, or I was going to have him at 35. So as an older female, I just knew okay, there may be some more risk. And I was kind of a little scared about the pregnancy in general. And so I was happy to be pregnant and I appreciated the experience as much as I could, but I really was not that mama who was like, I loved it. It was beautiful. I was happy to have my baby, but I did not love any. And again, I'm so grateful that we were able to have a baby naturally. And I was so grateful when I saw that, that very faint little line. But yeah, it's just, I have patients that I'll see every now and then. They'll be like, oh, everything's going great. I love it. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. I'm so glad for you guys. I was swollen at my feet. My legs were swollen. I was throwing up. I had heartburn, all of the things. I mean, anytime you saw a symptom, I was like, oh, well, hopefully that doesn't happen since I had all these others. Oh, no, we'll just add that into the list. It was, so it was definitely an experience.
So what did you guys do to begin to prepare for birth? So I know you took our childbirth education course. So could you talk more about other things that you did to prepare?
I tried to work out throughout the pregnancy. So I tried to stay pretty active, mostly because I didn't want to be really sore. Later on, I wanted to be able to move. I found you guys later in my pregnancy. I was third trimester, going into my third trimester whenever I found you all, which was wonderful. I did listen to another podcast and they shared a lot of, pregnancy and birth stories too. And it was really kind of nice to hear those stories. And I felt a little less alone, because you don't really know what you're getting into, right? It was nice to just hear other people's different types of births. So then, it was a little less concerning of, okay, what's mine going to be like? It's oh, it'll be fine. All these women have done it. You're going to do great. Just learn as much as you can and go from there.
And then how was the end of your pregnancy?
Well, I guess it was going to be my 36 week, 36, 30. I would guess it was the end of my 36 weeks. On a Thursday, I went in and I had been noticing my blood pressure was starting to become a little more elevated. And they were like, oh, it's not too bad. We'll just keep an eye on it. That was, I guess, before my 36 week appointment. So I had been monitoring my blood pressure at home and it had been really getting elevated, especially at nighttime when I was sitting down doing nothing. I couldn't seem to really do anything to improve it. So when I got to that 36 week appointment, she was looking at my numbers and she was like, I really don't like your numbers. They're getting a little too high. She told me she wanted to induce me that Sunday. So I found out on Thursday that I was going to have my baby on Sunday, which turned out to be Monday. But yeah, that was a fun surprise.
How did you feel when you realized that you had to be induced?
I was supposed to meet with Gina on Sunday to talk about my birth plan. I had this whole thought of how I wanted it to be. I had already had plenty of candles. We had ordered a couple things to kind of help with positioning. I live 6 minutes from the hospital, so I wanted to be at my house in labor as long as I could, and then just, drive over there a little bit closer to when I was actually going to give birth. And I thought, oh, this will be great. And like Gina can come over to the house, so I'll feel more comfortable staying at home a little bit longer. And then, of course, on that Thursday, I found out, well, that's not going to happen. So just find a new plan. And so I was excited, kind of, because I kind of like to know when things are going to happen. So it's kind of cool to know, okay, I'm gonna go in and have this baby on this day. And the other part of me I was really kind of nervous because that puts me at 37 weeks, and I really wanted baby to cook a little bit longer, right? Like, you want the best for your baby. And so there was definitely a part of me that felt like I kind of failed. I was really pretty upset about that. You can't do anything at the time. You just have to go, okay, well, this is what we're doing, so we're going to go do it, right? I was definitely worried, like, if we were going to end up with a NICU stay because of, having to go in a little early. I wasn't sure where that lung development was going to be.
So let's get into your induction. So Sunday comes around. We did not meet.
Nope.
I don't remember when I joined you guys for your birth, but we did not meet to talk about your birth plan on Sunday. So how was Sunday for you?
I think we did. When I talked to you Thursday night, it was like, hey, I'm going to do this. And you and I had like a quick conversation about it. We went to a big breakfast that morning because I knew, like, okay, we did pack some sneaky snacks, just to be honest. But I knew that they weren't going to let me eat anything. So I went in with a full belly, and we got there and they were like, oh, well, we actually tried to call you. All the beds are full. And they said, well, wait, hold on. And they had, I guess someone didn't show. So they did let me go ahead and stay, but they almost kicked me out, which was kind of funny.
There's no room in the inn.
Right, exactly. Which, I mean, I guess it happens a lot. I had a friend who went in for an induction. They kept kicking her out. They're like, sorry, we don't have space for you. Different state even.
Oh, it happens all the time, like way more often than people realize.
Yeah, so we got in, we got settled. They took some blood work and I met with the doctor. So I went in and we did a Sinotech first, and that was at 10:24. They gave me that first little pill. They insert that in the vagina, and they say, okay, walk around and kind of hang out. The more you can walk to try to help kickstart labors, that'd be great. And they'll come back and check on you. And so I did, which is funny because when I took the class, you were sharing your story and you were like, I walked a bunch and I would recommend not doing that. I'd recommend enjoying early labor.
It's a little different with inductions.
Well, I did the opposite. So I did the opposite, right? So I'm like, okay. And I knew at my check, or she had checked me at my 36-week appointment, and I was not dilated at all. It was my first baby. So I didn't expect to really I was 70% of phase, not dilated when I went in for this induction. So like, it wasn't favorable to have an induction. It's not like this was great. We just kind of did it because, again, my blood pressure was pretty elevated and we didn't want to have a problem with baby. But yeah, so back to the story. Get the little Cytotec pill. I'm walking around. I didn't really notice much. I know you and I were texting a little bit throughout the day, and it was fine. I was too excited to sleep though. And so she checked me again, and I was like, I think still 70% phased and station -3. They gave me a Cytotec number 2 at 2:30 in the afternoon. So again, not a lot going on. Didn't really have anything. At 7:30, she checked me again, and I was 70 to 80% phased. She called it a type 1, so barely dilated. Station was still -3. And I was texting you about this. At some point, we had talked about manually breaking my water. And you said, yeah, I would just make sure I would just recommend not doing that until, I don't know, what point were you saying maybe to have them break water, like when the baby had moved down at a certain station? What was your recommendation?
Yeah, it's usually like a -2 station or lower, so they're well engaged.
Yeah. So again, I'm not a good listener. So at midnight, I'm looking at my doctor and she's got like a pretty worried look on her face. And she doesn't want to do another round of Cytotec because my contractions were there. They were a little too close together. And so she was afraid. Basically, she was saying, if we did a third round of Cytotec, there wasn't a way to stop it. So like if we went with Pitocin, they could slow it down and titrate it. But with that Cytotec, they weren't going to be able to. And so she was recommending to do Pitocin. And so we started Pitocin. And then about midnight, she came back. I had been on the Pitocin for a little bit. I was like 1.5 centimeters dilated, about 80% effaced, and still a negative 3 station. But we broke my water anyways, which came back to bite me in the butt later. We did find that out. So yeah, 12:15, I had my water broken. At this point, my head, so it's the nurse and the doctor, and they're talking, and the doctor's face looks a little stressed because she's like, man, you could tell she's like, how am I going to get this woman, into labor? What are we going to do? And my husband is snoring in the background, like snoring so loud. And we're talking about breaking my water. I'm like, okay, let's just do it. And they're like, do you want to wake your husband up? And I look over and the guy is just out. And I'm like, no, just let him sleep. It's fine. Whatever. So she breaks my water. He's still sleeping the whole thing. At some point, we're like finishing, like my water's been broken. We talked about it. He snores so loud, he wakes himself up and finally joins the party. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, what's going on? I'm like, don't worry about it. Just go back to sleep. It's fine. It's fine. And he obviously wakes up and comes over. And then, of course, as soon as he hears what's going on, he's like, oh, well, I thought Gina said you should wait. It's like, okay, babe. Well, you weren't here to help, so it's too late. We're already there. And I knew that at that point, I was like, okay, so I'm barely dilated. My water's broken. The clock's ticking now. I stopped eating my sneaky snacks just in case, like, okay, well, what if I end up with a C-section or something like that? So those fears kind of started to come into play more. And I was like, well, we'll just see where this goes. And about 2 or 3 in the morning, I started to actually feel the contractions a little bit more. I was having a little bit more pain. And I think 3 or 4, it was when I texted you, and I was texting Gina and saying, hey, I'm actually kind of struggling now. Like I'm in pain. Can you come over and help? And Houston was trying. But again, that man, he was so sleepy. He's great during the day. He's not a night person at all. If you need to do anything at night, he's not your guy. In the morning, he's got you. So my husband, again, sleeping peacefully, having a great nap. I was layering my music because I forgot my headphones, and that's all. I mean, I just wanted to sit there in my own space, listen to some music on my headphones, but I forgot them. So I'm just blaring 90s music through the whole halls. I don't know if you heard it, like walking down in labor and delivery. The nurses made a comment about it. So I figured they were like, oh, we like your music. I was like, oh, sorry, guys. So that's what I did from the hours of 3 in the morning until, I don't know when you got there, 5, or when you got there, Gina? 5-ish.
Yeah, I think so. It was early.
So that's kind of when things were starting to pick up, and I was actually starting to have, I was feeling my contractions more. They were getting more intense. And at that point, I kind of went into they call it labor land, where you're just kind of there and you're just trying to survive at that point. You're in survival mode. So I did that for a little while. And I know we used the TENS unit a lot. That thing was wonderful. I loved that thing. And y'all put some pressure on me. I used the ball. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I kept wanting to go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet. So I did that a lot because that way no one would touch me, because they kept coming in to fix my monitor. That little monitor that goes on your belly, and it kept moving every time I was trying to move on the ball. And they'd come in, we just need to adjust this. And we just need to adjust this. And I finally was like, if these women don't stop touching me. And I get it. They were lovely women. I really liked my nurses. I thought they were sweet. I thought they did a good job. And I want them to monitor baby. But when you're in pain, the last thing you want is some stranger to come up and be like, let me just adjust this little monitor again. Anyway, so that was 5 in the morning. I guess it's 7 in the morning is when the new doctor came on, and she came in to check. And at that point, the Pitocin was really high. I was in a lot of pain. And it was funny. I looked at her note, right, to make my own notes. And I guess I was 90% effaced. I was only 4 centimeters. she was like, but the baby is really low. So, once you're fully dilated, this is going to go fast. But I read her note and she said, mother tolerating labor well. And I was sitting there thinking, I was not tolerating labor well at that moment. That's really cute.
You were tolerating it well.
I thought it was so funny. I read that, laughed to myself. I was like, if that's what tolerating it well looks like, I was like, I don't know what not tolerating it well looks like. Cause I was like, could you please turn
somebody trying to leave, lots of screaming. You were doing a good job.
I just thought it was funny. I think I remember, like, I asked her, I was like, can we just turn the Pitocin down? Like, can we just, like, for a minute? Everything was just so intense. It was going really fast. And they basically said no. And then the next nurse that came on was very sweet. She was like, well, that's not my practice. Once labor's started, I'm happy to, turn it down. And then if we need, and titrate it down. If we need it again, we'll titrate it back up. And so I think she said she turned it down. I didn't really look to see if she did. And I was in no capacity to actually figure that out. So I think you and I hung out for a little bit. And that was around the time that I was like, I'm done. I want the epidural. Because in my head, I'm going, I am only 4 centimeters. I have been doing this for a while. I just want a nap. That's all I wanted. I was like, I just want to take a little nap and then I will go back at it. And so it finally was like, okay, I'm getting the epidural. And I love it. Gina looks at me and she goes, okay, do you want to get checked before? And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't care. And she's like, is it going to matter? And I was like, no, it's not. I want this. I want it. And you're like, okay, that's fine. So I labored for a little while more. Anesthesiologist comes in and they kick both Gina and my husband out, right? A little bit. And they're like, go get coffee. It's going to be a while, right? You guys have time. So they started this epidural at 8:00 and he finished at 8:16. I know this because I looked at the notes because I was curious, right? They left and I was talking to the nurse and I had tears in my eyes and I'm going, I still feel a lot of pressure. And she's like, well, you're going to feel the pressure. It's just taking away the pain. I was like, okay, so I need to push. And she's like, well, she checked me again. I was at 9.5 centimeters. And she goes, no. We want to wait till you're like fully dilated. She's trying to explain something to me and I stopped listening. And I just looked at her and I was like, I'm going to start pushing now. And I did. I just started bearing down. So she looked at me and she's like, I'm going to go get the doctor. I was like, whatever, that's fine. I don't care what you do. I'm busy. So I started just bearing down on my own and was like, oh, someone will come catch the baby. There's plenty of people around me. Someone's going to show up, right? And so she came back pretty quickly. I mean, they had a team in there pretty fast and they were super supportive. And not long after, Gina and my husband pop back in and they're like, look at her. I'm like, what happened? What are y'all doing? And Gina looks at me and she's like, do you want to push on your back? Like, is this a comfortable position? And I look at her and I'm like, yeah, I guess. I'm sitting here thinking, I've been pushing for like a couple of minutes now. I'm fine.
I'm good here.
I'm just waiting on y'all to hurry up. So I pushed a little bit and at 8:34, we had my baby. And that's all I remember. My epidural kind of kicked in. They didn't have time to put a catheter in because, I just started without them. And then I had that sweet little boy. They put him on my chest and like my whole world changed and felt super bonded to him. And it was the most amazing moment I've ever had in my whole life. And it was cool. I really liked it. I thought the birth part was great. I didn't love the induction part. Birth part, perfect. I would do again. It was great.
So what advice do you have for others that may find themselves having an unexpected induction when they maybe were planning something very different?
Well, I mean, I think that's life, right? You just kind of have to go with the flow and, kind of pivot and make it work for you. So like we brought in flameless candles and we brought in essential oils and a little humidifier for that. And so it made it kind of relaxing. So you just kind of work with what you got, right? That's what you do in life anyways.
Well, I appreciated you going pretty quickly from when I got there.
Well, I will say for a first time induction, that's still fairly fast because it's less than 24 hours that you were like, got your first dose of Cytotec to baby being born. Like that's fairly quick for a first induction, first baby. If that like makes you feel any better about it.
It does. At the end of the day, my baby came out healthy. He didn't have to go to the NICU, which was a huge blessing. Yeah. I was super excited about that. He came out, his APGAR was an 8, and then it went up to a 9 at 5 minutes. So, we were good. You had just had that sweet little girl of hers, And when I first called her at 5 o'clock in the morning and I found out I was like 2 centimeters dilated, and I was like, I called in Gina for 2 centimeters. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I am such a wimp. Like, I'm not going to get through this whole labor thing. I don't understand like how these women do it. I just thought it was the funniest.
Because I think we found out that you were like 2 centimeters like right after I got there. So it's like you had your water broken and you were texting me like very apologetically, like, I'm really sorry. It just kind of happened. And then I got there and we were like, you're 2 centimeters. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be a long one. Like, and then it was like 2 hours later, the baby was born. And I was like, well, this just goes to show dilation means nothing. It's just a moment in time.
Yeah, really. It's not a crystal ball. You went 0 centimeters to a baby.
Oh, it's so funny because you hear like dilation doesn't mean everything, like it's okay. But when it's you and you're waiting, you're like,
oh yeah,
I just want to have this baby. Like, please. Like, why?
It means everything in the moment, but it's really hard to overcome that. Like
both of us.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're only 1 centimeter. Cry.
My face. I still remember that moment. Like my face. And I kind of looked over at Gina and you could see she was like trying to not show a face, but you could tell she was like, I'm going to be here.
Gina can't hide her face.
It's fine. And I was like, all I could think is, Holly, you are such a jerk. How are you going to call her in at 2 centimeters? They wouldn't even admit you to the hospital. You need to go sit down. Like, so I did. I kind of, at that point, I was like, well, don't complain. It's just going to get worse. So suck it up, Buttercup.
You did it, though.
We did it. And it was great.
It was still a great birth. You still coped very well with your contractions. I think if we delayed you like another 20 minutes, you probably would have had an unmedicated birth, maybe unwillingly, though. So I think the epidural was a good choice for you at the very end.
I think you all probably could have talked me out of the epidural, but I'm also like, I'm a pretty direct person. So sometimes, which is actually one reason I wanted, like, I was like, I loved having a doula, is that sometimes I can be really direct to the point where like puts people off or like intimidates them. So I was like, this is nice. I'll have a mediator. So when I'm in pain and I want to say something, but I can't say it nicely, maybe she can help me say it, This will be great. Because sometimes when you're in pain, you're not always your best person. And like, that was one thing I don't know why that was something I was worried about. Like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings while I'm pregnant and laboring and all this stuff. But I guess we all, like, I want to be nice to people.
Labor and delivery nurses have very thick skin.
And I'm sure they have to, but I also don't want to be the reason why someone has thicker skin from that day, right? So like,
yeah, I thought you were pretty kind to everybody. I didn't get the impression that anybody was like, this bitch,
right?
I think everyone was a big fan.
That's all I could think of.
I feel like in your head, you think that the whole experience is way different. Like you think like you're like crazy or like loud and not coping well, but then like the actuality of it was like you were probably like incredibly in control and calm. Like I've watched videos from my birth where in the moment I was like, I felt like I was thrashing around, like screaming at people. In the video, it's me just like, this is bullshit, guys. So like I'm sure you were actually like incredibly in control and like very sweet, even though in your mind you're probably picturing yourself being like wild.
Right. Where you're like, okay,
I'll be there for your next birth if you have another baby.
Oh, I can.
Because you were pretty good.
I love it. Oh, absolutely.
I'm hiring myself.
You already know, like, okay, whenever Holly's ready for another one, she's going to call me and be like, hey, are you free? Do you want to come hang out with me while I labor? Because you saw my husband. Like, God bless him. He's a wonderful father and husband. He is a sleepy man and he's just going to be asleep in the corner. So I need somebody else there with me just to kind of, when old Papa Houston goes to sleep to help me out during the middle of the night when labor usually happens.
Just need a daytime birth.
Just a middle of the day birth. If we can schedule it, that would be great.
Right. Why not?
I usually wake up at 8 a.m.
Exactly. He would shine. He really would. Oh, God bless him.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, for sharing your birth story on our podcast and also for allowing me to be at your birth. That always means a lot to me when I am welcomed into someone's birth space, which is such this big moment in your life. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you guys. It was awesome.
Hey guys, so my name is Renee. I'm a certified nurse midwife, and I wanted to go ahead and tell you guys about some of my friends that work over at MamasteFit. They are an amazing company. They are amazing at focusing on everything from perinatal area. So that's from before you get pregnant, trying to conceive. That's while you're pregnant. That's postpartum. They are amazing in helping you with fitness, pelvic floor balance, pelvic floor therapy, good exercises. How do we balance your pelvis to get you ready and more acclimated for a safe and healthy labor? They have birth bundles. They have classes, they have so many different things and so many resources that you can use if they're not local to you, and you can actually print them off and give them to your birthing team so that we can help take better care of you. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I highly endorse them, and I am so honored that they allowed my humble opinion to be a part of educating you, and I hope that you understand how amazing that they are. So thank you guys so much at MamasteFit. I absolutely love and adore you guys. Thank you for helping me help birthing people come in, deliver beautiful, healthy babies, and truly enjoy a great, balanced, amazing birth story. I really appreciate you guys.
In Holly's story, she talks about how her dilation did not match where she felt she was in labor and how it was a little discouraging for her. And so it's important to note that dilation is just a moment in time and it's not a predicting tool. And so during pregnancy, we can't use dilation to predict when you're going to go into labor. So you can be 1 centimeter dilated and then have your baby that night, or you can walk around for several weeks at 5 centimeters dilated. And then during labor, we can't use dilation as a predicting tool of how much longer you have to go into labor, because you can be 2 centimeters dilated like Holly and then have your baby in 2 hours, or you can be 8 centimeters dilated and not have your baby for 12 hours. And so it's not necessarily a predicting tool that you can use in either time frame. In addition, dilation does not always match where you are in labor. And we have this labor timeline that can kind of help you understand like where you are in labor and how much longer you maybe have to go. And so to start, we have early labor, which is the very start of labor where you're starting to feel your contractions. And then this timeline can sometimes be a little confusing where you're being induced. Just keep that in mind. With early labor, you are pretty much unaffected by your contractions. You feel that they're happening, but you can walk and talk through them. You can take a nap through them. You can eat a whole meal. You're pretty much just living your full life, but you're in labor. When we make it to early active labor, you're no longer walking and talking during those contractions. You're starting to focus on the contractions, but then in between, you're returning to the space. So you're in the middle of a conversation, you pause for your contraction, maybe your partner has to give you some counter pressure, and then you return to the conversation. So that's the key, that we're still in that early phase, is that you're returning to the conversation and you're still very present and involved in your environment. Once we make it to active labor, you're needing support during your contractions, but you're also just kind of in your own world, as Holly described, in labor land, in between contractions. So you're no longer engaged in conversation. You don't really want to laugh or talk to anybody. And for me as a doula, a big clue to know that my clients are in active labor is that their partners are now the ones that are texting or calling me, because being on their phone is just too mentally taxing. And that's how it was for me during my own births. Like when my husband had to start calling the midwife, she knew this was the real deal, even though it was not always the real deal. I was just being lazy, I guess, with my contractions. I was just feeling sleepy. So that's the general time frame of like that first part of labor. And that may or may not correspond to a specific dilation. So you can be 2 centimeters dilated and in a more active labor pattern. How fast or slow you dilate doesn't really depend on like where you are either. So just because it took you 24 hours to make it to 2 centimeters doesn't mean it's going to take you 4 more days to make it to 10. You can go from that 2 to 10 in like 3 hours, which is kind of what happens to Roxanne and I, where our first birth, we were like 2 centimeters after over a day of laboring. Very sad.
Tear.
So much sadness. And then we had our babies in like a few hours. And so however long it took you to get to a certain dilation is not necessarily the linear pace that it's going to take you to get to whatever. So dilation is a moment in time. It's really hard to believe that in the moment, that it is just a moment in time and it doesn't mean anything. It can feel very defeating, but it's just a moment in time. And I'm going to say it repeatedly. I don't even believe it myself when I'm in labor. You probably will not either. But like maybe subconsciously you'll remember that it's a moment in time and it will not completely destroy you when you hear that you're anything less than 10 centimeters.
And during an induction, it's still helpful for your providers to do those cervical exams. So if you have to be induced, just know that you still have to have cervical exams because it helps them create your plan and decide what interventions that they can utilize to help put you into labor. Because until you go into labor and start contracting, they're going to need to use different tools to get you there. But once you start contracting and you start progressing through like your different labor timeline, however you get there, that's when they can start relying on your temperament a little bit more, not maybe so much on that cervical exam. Because once you are contracting, you're going to kind of go through that pattern. You might still only be 2 centimeters and feel like you are in active labor or transition, similar to Holly. But know that, again, cervical dilation is just a moment in time. It does not tell you when your baby is coming, but it is still helpful during an induction to know what they can utilize to get you into labor if you're not already there.
And so if you are wanting an unmedicated birth and you are curious about using cervical dilation as a tool to help motivate you to continue to have your unmedicated birth, know that you have to be okay with hearing something other than 10 centimeters. And it can be very defeating to hear that you're only whatever dilation. However, I do find it helpful if somebody's in transition, and I could probably reasonably assume that they're probably like an 8 or 9 because they're starting to push and all that. Sometimes if you're in transition and your desire was to have an unmedicated birth and you're asking for an epidural, I usually recommend to my clients, or I'll offer to my clients, hey, would you like to get checked or have a cervical exam to see where you're at? And the ones where like they might be a little motivated if they hear that they're an 8 will say yes. And they're like, I would like to know where I'm at. And then I'll make a decision. And the ones that are like, I could be 10 centimeters, my baby could be crowning, I'm still getting an epidural. They're like, no, thank you. You could not tell me any number that would make me change my mind right now. They don't get a cervical exam and they wait until they get their epidural and they have all the pain relief before anybody checks them again. And in Holly's case, just pulls their baby from her body because he was falling out. So if you are wanting an unmedicated birth and you're considering changing your mind at like the last moment, or you're not sure if you want to keep going or if you want to get an epidural, sometimes getting checked can be helpful to know if you're like almost there. But know that you have to be okay with hearing whatever the number is, because it can be very disheartening to hear you're only this when you were like really hoping for a little bit more. And so for me, in both my home births, one time I got checked, I was 5 centimeters and I was like, I was really hoping I was like an 8 or something, even though I was not in active labor yet. I was just kind of hoping I was one of those people, even though that was not my labor pattern at any time in my history. But, every labor is unique. And even for me in that moment, it was still kind of like, man, I was hoping I was a little bit more than that. And I kind of had to talk myself and motivate myself to be like, it's okay. It's just a moment in time. It's not a big deal. So know that if you do decide to get a cervical exam during your birth and it's just your own choice and something that you want to kind of help you make a new decision, you have to be okay with hearing whatever the number is because it can be really disheartening. And we'll repeat it till the end of days. It's just a moment in time. It's a moment in time. And it'll still be really hard to believe it in the moment.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this episode and joining us today. If you want more support throughout your pregnancy, join our prenatal fitness programs and childbirth education courses. If you want more support after birth, you can join our postpartum fitness programs and education courses. Pending postpartum and newborn course should be released soon. If you are a professional, we offer birth worker and fitness trainer courses so you can learn from us and earn CEUs. You can explore all of the courses and our offerings on our website at MamasteFit.com and use code STORY10 to save 10% off all of our programs. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow our podcast to be notified when we release new episodes. Please tell all of your friends, leave a review, shout it at the grocery store to random people that are pregnant. Maybe don't actually, because don't assume anyone's pregnant. But anyone that looks like they need to listen to our podcast, tell them. We release new episodes every Wednesday and new birth stories every Friday.